Welcome to Queerly Speaking. I'm your host, Nat Jones, and together my wife and I will navigate the complex intersections of faith, identity, love, and resilience. In each episode, we'll share stories of heartbreak, healing, and hope from individuals who were told they didn't belong in the very spaces that shaped us. Welcome back. Thanks for listening in. Both of us actually have received so many texts and messages from people who have really appreciated the conversations and really means the world to us, honestly.
Yeah,
it can be so vulnerable and awkward to have some of these conversations and then be like, let's have a really deep conversation about all the inner workings of my past and my life, and then let's post it on the internet. So really appreciate the encouragement. And last week, I received a lot of texts from the episode about like self-expression. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool to see it. Like a couple people said like, oh, I had not like put that together. I hadn't like thought about how maybe something that someone had said to me when I was younger or some of the societal norms had really had such an impact on what I grew to like or love or not like or love, whatever it is. So that was really cool. Really appreciate the feedback on that and glad that it's not just me and that other people can relate. On our very first episode, we talked a little bit about kind of like an overview of my story. And then we've spent a couple of weeks going through just, you know, different things that would come up when I was little or a teenager. And in the second episode ended around like 15, 16 years of age. And I have the stories pick up. They have a little bit more humor and they are equally as wild. So when my parents found out for the first time, so if you listen to the first episode and you remember, I mentioned that there was like a prophetess in the house, which a prophetess is someone who hears directly from God and then is responsible in sharing that with the church or whatever group of people.
Can this be anyone? Or does your church have, like, this is the church prophetess? Or could it be like, I got a message? I feel like when I ask these questions, it sounds like I'm poking fun, but I really am not, I swear. It's a genuine question. Like, could you become that at any time? Like, is it any person who gets a message from God?
Or your questions are so funny because it just like reveals like how much you did not have the same experience.
No, not at all.
So I won't get too deep into it, but I will say this. Okay. So there's a fivefold ministry. Those fivefold ministry is like the leaders among leaders, right? In the church. It's the prophet, the teacher, the evangelist. Oh my gosh, it's escaping my mind. I've known this my whole life.
Well, it's not mine. I'll tell you that for free.
Okay. Oh, apostle. Anyway.
I know those.
No, you don't.
Well, yeah, like the 12, right?
No, those are the apostles. So these are like
I'm really diverting the conversation, but I just need to know who had the message.
Like there is like a prophet of the fivefold ministry, meaning that like the gift on your life is to be a prophet.
Okay, so it's not, that's different than someone who just feels like they got a message from God that they want to share.
Correct.
Like
the belief is, well, it's not a one-off, but the belief is that like we all can hear from God and you can have the gift of prophecy as well, but that doesn't necessarily make you a prophetess or prophet. There's like fivefold ministry and then there's gifts of the Spirit, which prophecy is one of the gifts of the Spirit, which come from the Holy Spirit. Okay.
Maybe that cleared it up for some of you guys. I don't know.
Probably not, because anyone who's listening will probably already know what I'm talking about. And those that haven't come from that, they're going to be like, what in the hell is she talking about? But just look it up. There's like fivefold ministry. Those are the leaders of the leaders in the church, right? That like an apostle might be over 5 churches. He might oversee 10 churches. And they have different things that they do.
Right. I just wanted to know if the person who's seeing this, it's like their job to see the messages and share with the church, or if it was like someone who just, you know, saw something and then they had a message and they just woke up and all of a sudden were gone. I think that helps me understand like how serious your parents were assessing the message. But this sounds like it was coming from the messenger. The person who's going to be giving the messenger was the one telling.
Yes.
It wasn't just like Susan 2 rows behind you in church who was
No.
like, I saw Nat rub up on someone's leg, and now
No.
that's a message. It's like,
No.
no, that's pointless, Jay.
It was a well-respected
Okay, thank you.
leader in the church.
That's important, I feel like.
Yes. Who I had also known my whole life.
Mhm.
And my parents very much respected this person. I think most people in the church did. Now, did God come to her and say, blank, blank, go tell Natalie's parents that she's having homosexual feelings? Absolutely not. I do not believe that happened in any capacity. I think that she saw us sitting very close in church.
Right, she saw the
and was
signs.
like, just like earlier in my life, my parents saw the signs, right?
Right.
And so anyway, my parents come home. My girlfriend calls me on my cell phone, gives me a heads up on my Razor flip phone.
Hello.
Gives me a heads up, like, and I actually to this day don't even know how she knew, but maybe it got to her mom before it got to my.
Maybe she got the message.
Yeah, I think she did actually, and so. Yeah, so I like know my parents are coming home and my dad's coming in like a bat out of hell.
Mhm.
Like you can hear him.
Bat out of heaven.
Right. Well, for this one, I don't know. So anyway, so like we're in this situation. He's like, there's a lot of things said back and forth, not nice things on either of our parts. And I'm trying to defend myself. He's like, both him and my mom are like, what is going on? You're like, just set yourself up on a pathway to hell.
So can we just pause? Can I just pause?
We're never going to make it through the story.
But this is kind of the whole point, to go in depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they come there. I mean, are they asking? And I know we talked about, I mean, obviously I know the whole story, but
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about that there were signs and, all of that.
Signs and symptoms.
Yeah, signs and symptoms. Girls can't wear red, God forbid, but.
That was not one of them, but yes.
But did they ask you? I mean, were they presenting it in a way that they're like, Natalie, we heard a rumor, like, is this true? Or are they coming in, like, at this point, they're like, oh, this shit's true. Like, they're coming in and they're like, why, like, are they accusatory already at this place because they believe it? Or are they coming in like, we heard something, we want to ask your side? Or they're like, oh no, we got to flip this around quick.
Yeah, because and here's like the backup on the backup. I had never been friends with this particular girl very much.
Mm-hmm.
And except that I became more closely friends because a boy in the youth group spread a really nasty rumor and about her that was like, honestly, a compliment when you're older about like, how much do I share?
Well, these people are going to remain anonymous, of course.
Of course. But yeah, essentially like the boy was like, oh yeah, we had sex and there was just like, she was like so, wet everywhere. And I'm like,
can we put that in? Can we cut that out?
Well, I don't know. I'm just trying to explain anyway. So I don't know. I mean, listen to it if you want to. Don't listen to it if you don't want to. Essentially, it was a really nasty rumor, which years later, he did apologize to her and me, actually, and was like, I was an asshole. However, this was way, way, way back then. And so immediately I was like, that's awful. And
again, where is the Christianity? You're not even supposed to be having premarital sex, and you certainly shouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah.
According to them. So, I mean, this is a soapbox, like a hill I will die on is the hypocrisy,
Yes.
but
Yes.
anywho.
But they were both known, like this guy and my girlfriend, or not at that point yet, but we're known as like the
rebels without a cause.
Yeah, kind of like the bad kids. They were not bad kids. They were normal kids.
Right, normal teenagers, yeah.
But so they already kind of had that reputation.
Okay.
It didn't help that her parents had been divorced, so she also had this stigma of like, oh, you're in the church and your family's, divorced. And there's just like a lot of things,
As if
I
that's
think.
her fault.
Again, but there's just a lot of things. And so I was like, well, that's stupid. Like, this guy sucks. And so anyway, we just became friends. And obviously very quickly, it started to not feel like friends, right? And, she would come over and go swimming at my house and my parents would be like, no, you can't be friends with her.
Because of the rumors kind of going on.
No, they
the
didn't even know
church?
about the rumors. It was just like, they saw how I interacted with her and was like, they were like, no, it was like red alert right away to them. because it was pretty, I mean,
Looking back, you feel like it
yeah,
was obvious.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't a secret. And I think I was probably, like, maybe I thought I was subtle, but probably wasn't near as subtle as I thought.
You're not really that smooth when you're 16. You know, you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, trying to hide all of your feelings and everything else. And so, yeah, so I think because of all of these like different things, then they were coming home after they spoke to the prophetess, and they were like, this is definitely true.
Okay, I see.
Yes. So,
just gonna put this away. Sorry, I needed to perk up for the conversation.
Yeah. So, yeah, so they come home, like we get in a huge fight. And it's like the whole conversation around abuse, and it's like, well, do you not see how this has impacted you, and that's why you have these feelings, and blah 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 blah. So in this time around, I'm angry. Like later in my life, well, once we get to that point, like I was really determined to do that whole come out differently and feel differently about it and not have bitterness and all of that. But like I was bitter.
So because of that, were you trying to, you know, like I know I've heard stories of other people who's, you know, that comes up to their parents and they're like, no, of course I'm not, you know, trying to hide it. Were you just like, yeah, you know what, fuck you guys, I am. Like, were you upset at this point? So or were you trying to deny, or it was just like,
I wasn't trying to deny. And at that point, again, I think I mentioned this in the first episode. It was like both times I came out, the last time I stayed out, thank God. But both times I came out, it was because of a person. And for some reason, I mean, actually not for some reason, it makes a lot of sense, that it was easy to grasp onto this person and be like, I am doing it for them. I'm not going to let them down. I'm not going, like that was the rationale behind it. I could drive at this point. Had just turned 17. She was 16. And she calls me and she's like, I'm at our youth pastor's house. Like, you need to come here. And I was like, okay. So I go there and, you know, her and her mom and the pastor and his wife are there, and they're like talking about the situation. And he's like, yeah, you know, I really was concerned. I could see it as well. Like, we obviously were not subtle in any way. Like, everybody was like, what is happening over there? And so we all end up there, and I'm like, and he's like, well, Natalie, like, don't you want to repent? Like, sometimes like friendships can get confusing. And I mean, there was all sorts of like rationale going in there.
Like,
no,
we touched on this a couple episodes, but
maybe if you're Christian,
you're gay.
Well, yeah, but maybe it is confusing if you're trying your best not to be gay. You can't be gay in your religion. Right. And well, yeah, I'm sure it does get confusing.
Right. I'm sure for you, but I mean, for him to say like, oh, it's normal that the friendship is like, it's not.
No.
You know, I mean, it's a normal experience if you're trying to work to come out, but we touched on that. Like, if you're straight, you're not having those thoughts with your friends.
Right. Right. And maybe you're somewhere on the spectrum of sexuality, because I really genuinely believe that there's like a spectrum. It's very rare that I think people are either like 100% gay or 100% straight. They're probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. I agree.
And they find that balance for themselves.
I just mean more so like he's presenting it that it's like, oh, it's normal if you're kind of struggling and you have to put those to the side. And it's like, well, of course, in your community, you're probably going to find other people who've had that shared experience because they're also being repressed.
100%.
You know what I mean? So it's just kind of upsetting.
Yeah. So, you know, we're there, we're having this conversation. There's like all sorts of stuff being said. And I'm like, no,
I'm not confused.
I did actually think, I'm like, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't know, but I'm doing this. And I'm even more determined to do it now because so many people are coming against me. Yeah, there were lots and lots of conversations. But anyway, my parents come over to the pastor's house and they're like, we're going home. And I'm like, I'm not going home. And they're like, you're a child, you have to go home. And then there's all this drama. Somehow the police get called. I'm not really sure who called the police, but the police get called. They show up and they're like, ma'am, how old are you? And I'm like 17. And so then they talk to my parents and they're like, in the state of Georgia, if you are 17 years old, you can't make her go home. She can choose to go home or she can choose not to.
It really ruffled some feathers, I bet.
It did, yes, to say the least. I will be honest with you. It's like, I really do try to go back and like remember all of the little details, especially like when we're having these conversations and I'm like, I don't remember
Yeah.
like
Even
what
if they blocked, I mean, some
happened after that. Um, I think if I recall correctly, so I'm assuming like maybe I did, I don't know. And because I hadn't actually like moved out. So because the day I moved out was very,
Yeah, you remember that.
yeah, I recall that
So this
clearly.
is over. I know we're going to get to when you moved out. There's a couple days of this, right? Then,
Yeah.
so prophetess gives the message,
And it's a whirlwind.
then there's a few days of just kind of chaos back and forth.
Yeah. I can't quite remember how many days it was, but I remember it being pretty quick. Like it was a very fast turnaround. And I just got to the point where I was like, I'm leaving. So they pretty much said, like, if you're going to live in this house, you can't be gay. You can't date a woman. We'll help you. We'll take you to all the counselors in the world and try to help you get over this. Like they were very sincere about that in their minds. Like that's not the right thing to do. But to them, they were like, we'll do anything for you, but you can't be gay. And you can't talk to her. You can't see her. You can't like, it was just like, and honestly, they probably just shouldn't have told me that because
just made you want to do it more.
Yeah, I was like, okay, then I'm out. Then I have to go. And so I remember we got, what do you call it? A kerfuffle? Is that what you call it? It's
I don't know that I don't know.
That's the word I'm going to use because I don't want to go into too much detail.
But that is a word people do use.
Yes, we got into a kerfuffle. And I think we all have some regrets for how the kerfuffle went. And I ended up like just walking straight out of my house. My t-shirt is ripped. I was in community college when I was 17. I started going to community college because I was homeschooled. I'm not sure I've ever mentioned that, but I was homeschooled and graduated early. So I was in community college working on my classes for college. And it was maybe 5-6 miles from our house. So I had on tennis shoes, my torn t-shirt, and jeans, and I walked straight out my front door.
Do you have any of your things? Like, did you bring anything? Just literally the clothes?
I did have a backpack, but the backpack was not allowed to go with me. So I was not allowed to bring anything. So I leave the house. You know, my adrenaline is so high. I'm just like pumping with anger. And I'm like, well, I'll just walk to community college. There's people there. What else am I going to do? So I walk from my house. It took me forever. It's like 5
You probably were going fast as fuck.
Yeah, I was.
When you're mad, you're like,
yeah. And I mean, on the side of a 4-lane highway, I'm walking to community college. I am so pissed. I get
people honking. Like, are your parents driving after you?
I don't know. Maybe they did. I don't remember seeing them. I don't remember seeing them. I'm sure they did. I can not imagine that they didn't. So I walk all the way there. And then I'm just sitting in the lobby of the little, like between all the different classes, there's like this little lobby area. And I'm just sitting there. I mean, I was there for like a long time. I'm sitting there and I'm like, what did I just do? Like, where am I going to go? I am 17 years old. I have no money, no clothes, no food, I don't have anything. But I'm going to like die on this cause, which is to be myself. So I'm sitting there and I'm like talking with a couple of ladies. At the time I was 17, they were probably like late 30s, early 40s. And they're like, we believe like, that's ridiculous. Like, I can't believe that's what your parents said, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. And so one of them finally was like, I mean, you can't just stay here, like at the community college. Like, they won't let you sleep here. And I was like, yeah. Okay. But I also don't have a car. I don't, I don't have anything. Yeah. So anyway, she's like, let me call my husband. So she calls her husband. She comes back and she goes, you can come home with us. And I'm like, that's my best option. Like, what am I going to do?
And did you know this lady before from a class or something? Or
no, yeah, like, she was from my class. And they'd done a couple projects together. Never seen her outside of school. Right. Never had a deep I don't know them. Right. Know them. But she's my only option. So I literally that day get in her car and they live like 45 minutes away.
It's like the start of a bad movie.
I think it could have been in many ways. But Yeah, so she takes me home and she has like a double wide mobile home that they redid. That's nice. She has two kids at home, a daughter and a son, and her husband, and have a lot of land. And so there's another mobile home on their land that doesn't have any power or water or anything like that. But the plan is, depending on how long I'm going to be there, that they're going to get the water and the electricity turned on for this mobile home. And then that's where I can stay until I figure out what I'm doing. So for the first couple of days, I'm like in their house. I think it was more than a couple of days. It took a while to get all the water and stuff turned on. But yeah, I'm just like living in their house. I have nowhere to go. I don't have any access to anything. I don't have a car. I don't have anything. And before I dated my girlfriend, I had dated this other guy and we weren't allowed to date. So I got in trouble when they found out that we were like dating.
They'd probably go back now and they're like, shouldn't have fucking opened my mouth and just let that one ride out.
I know. And he had a sweetest guy, but he had a t-shirt business. And I'm serious, he did.
I've never been to the state of Georgia, but it's just like every story. I'm like,
oof. Yeah. Well, he made t-shirts
for good for him, a young entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, t-shirts for like the church and the youth group. And like, honestly, he was doing pretty well as a business.
That's solid. Good for him.
Yeah. I don't have any clothes.
Right.
I don't have anything. I have the underwear I have on. Right. So the lady took me to Walmart and she got me like some underwear and all this different stuff. And then, my ex-boyfriend at the time, also like a good friend, right? Like we were all good friends. Like he met up with me and he's like, well, can you meet me here? I'm going to bring you some clothes.
That's nice.
Yeah. So nice, honestly. And so he brought me like probably 15 t-shirts and that's all I had to wear.
Were they Jesus themed?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's all I had to wear for
that's nice.
Quite some time. Yeah, it was really nice, honestly. So now I'm like, okay, we're really doing this. Like, I got to get a job. I need a car. Like, I got to get on my feet. So,
have you had any contact with your ex-girlfriend at this time? Like, did you? Well, she's your girlfriend. Like,
yeah,
we were. I was not sure current girlfriend at the time, but
yeah.
Did you had any contact? Like, were you able to even take your phone with you when you left? So you're like, hey, by the way, I'm living with these people now, or I mean,
no,
I hear from you for a week?
I had her telephone memorized. It was like where we actually still remembered numbers.
Yeah, of course.
And I called her from the lady's house. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So she at least knew like you were okay.
Kind of. Yes. And to be honest, my mom also called there. So maybe, I honestly don't remember all the details, but I do remember my mom calling, and I remember my mom calling because when I was still living in their house, her husband, like all the kids and the lady went to bed and I was sleeping on the couch, but he was out in his like big lazy boy just watching TV still. And I'm like, I look back on this and I'm like, this could have gone wrong in so many ways. Like I do feel like that God / the universe was definitely looking out for me and on my side. But he was like, you know, do you want some pot? That was like, I'd never been even asked in my whole life. Like, I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, this is how you do it. You know, and then, so he gave me the pipe or whatever. So the first person I spoke pot with was this lady's husband.
Like a strange man that you're now living with.
Yeah. And that night, so weird. That night, my mom calls and I remember she's like, why are you slurring your words? What is wrong? And I was like, I'm not feeling my best. So I took some NyQuil. You just caught me at the wrong time, but it's not, it was not that. But like, weird is that you got this 17-year-old girl in your house and you're still up at night and you're like, want some pot? Yeah, you know, it's so weird looking back. He did get in trouble for that by his wife.
Oh, yeah. She's probably thinking like, we're trying to help this kid out. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So anyway, we got like, you know, it goes on. I get a job at this place called Seminole Winds, and it is a Southern buffet restaurant.
My family loves a buffet.
They would have liked this one. And
I love the Seminoles.
Yeah, way out in the country. So anyway, I started working there. So I'm like getting some cash and that I'm starting to have like these experiences after being like exposed to the world. And it wasn't just exposed to the world. It was probably like being exposed to like maybe areas of the world I would have never been.
Yeah.
So like I'm there. They're like, why are you here? What's your story? Because I'm like the youngest person there. Not only to like in the actual restaurant who's eating there, because everyone's like 90 years old, but also working there. It was like mortified because there was this guy in the kitchen. And anyway, so he like pulls his dick out in the kitchen and is like just rolling it around because there's like multiple of us.
In the kitchen.
Yeah. And he's like, you sure you don't want some dick? You've never even tried it. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm positive.
After that, you're like, surely fucking not now. What?
Yeah. So anyways, like that, those are good examples of just like.
That is a health code violation.
There,
in addition to many other things.
Yes. Many, many other things.
Oh my God.
But, in the backwoods of Georgia, it was an interesting experience. And that was one of many. Yeah, so that was like a crazy experience. So I'm like going to work, I'm doing that. I am able to see my girlfriend. Her mom was like a bit more chill. And I remember her mom being on the phone with both of us, and she was just like, what are you guys doing? Are you telling me for the rest of your life, you only want to touch a vagina? And I didn't say anything. I was just like,
absolutely.
So we get off the phone and my girlfriend calls me and she's like, I was just waiting for you to say, yes, I do. She was like, I was about to like mow you over with a car if that's what you were going to like say to my mother. I was so scared. And I was like, well, that is what I was thinking, but I understand, like, I didn't say that to her. But anyway, so we're like kind of working through all of that. The only way that my girlfriend can get to me is by taking a ride with the one boy who is obsessed with her and wants to date her. There's just a lot of things going wrong.
Is she like, so she's like, hey, just curious, can you drive me to my girlfriend's house?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, sure. Or like, is she lying? And she's
no,
like,
she wasn't. I mean, he would sometimes.
He's so down bad. He's like, I'll do anything for you.
Yeah. It was really sick to watch for him and for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that feel for you? You're like,
not good.
Her taxi is like, wants to get with her.
Not good, but I'm in such a desperate situation. Like I'm
you
like
don't have any other options.
No, I'm building my life from absolutely nothing. There's one, at this point I'm living in the other mobile home. By myself. I've never been by myself in my whole life. I grew up with 4 siblings and a big family. Like I've never spent time alone.
And that's a big, like to have a house by yourself in the middle of nowhere. It sounds
when you're
like
17 years old.
Yeah.
Honestly, there have been some bad times in my life, but I think that was one of the worst. Just like being alone.
Yeah, I bet.
And the only movie, only VHS they had in the mobile home that I found, because I couldn't stand it being quiet. So I had to just play a movie or something. I had to play something. And, phones weren't really like.
Yeah, you weren't scrolling on TikTok.
No, you can flip your phone, whatever, but you're not using it like that. And so the only thing I had was this movie, and it was old school. And so the song would play over and over and over, and I would just leave it, and then I would rewind it, the whole movie, and then it would play, and it was just the song over and over and over again. To this day, I cannot watch that movie.
I bet. Yeah.
And I can't even, if I hear the song, I'm like it. Oh,
it takes you back to that place.
God, yeah, it was awful. So also it's like my first time drinking and my first time, mainly like drinking and going to parties and like all this other stuff. And so I'm not making the best choices because I've never been exposed to anything.
Right.
So like I'm not being safe. And so crazy time. And then I would be out like in the back behind the mobile home, like trying to get tan. And then I would hear the little gator like driving up. And so then I'd have to run back inside. And like he would say things to me, the lady's husband would say things to me like, well, let me know if you need some help rubbing the oil on and like weird stuff.
Oh my God.
That was one of the last things I was like, I have got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here. So I had saved up enough money by that point, moved into town and lived on Washington Street and had an apartment. It was from a private landlord because at this time I think I had turned 18. And then I started working at the country club. Now I'm making a lot more money.
It's a big jump from the Seminole.
You're telling me.
Seminole wins.
You're telling me. So, and then I'm working in the bar and just really able to like make a lot more money so that I can like survive. I have a car by this point, probably about 6 months in, I had gotten a car and when I was still at the mobile home and made a deal. Like, there's just like, well, I don't know if you have them here, but in the South, like you'll have like these really shady like car dealerships and they're small.
Oh yeah. What are they called? Buy here, pay here? Is that
Yeah.
the same thing? Yeah.
And so I just had to give him like a small amount of cash to begin the process. No credit check, nothing
Yeah.
on my name, nothing
The
at
car's
all.
probably a lemon.
Yeah. And I just have to drop off cash once a month for the car payment. It's the only way I could be able to get a car. Anyway, so I had that car and then it did just kind of stop working.
Yeah.
And then, now I'm working at the country club and I buy myself a used Mustang. It was a
Oh.
red Mustang.
It's kind of hot.
Loved that car. My girlfriend wrecked it, but before that happened,
You have a history
it did.
of bad drivers.
Yeah, it seems like I'm really drawn to them. And so yeah, so now I'm in the apartment, right? And in between all of that, I think I mentioned in the first episode, right? My dad's going to the restaurant to the first restaurant I worked at to be like, she's too young. I'm going to report you to the IRS if you don't like fire her, and just trying to like
But you
remove the
can't work
resources.
it seems like. So is he just like trying to
No,
scare them?
no, I think, yeah, because I think he knew that we got paid under the table. So
Oh,
my dad's a very business smart person. So it's like, yeah, that's something I would do. I mean, not actually,
Right,
but not for
no,
that
yeah,
reason.
for
But
sure.
it's like, yeah, it was a good reason.
But during that time, just to pause you for a second, like, is your family reaching out, hoping, like, are they calling you? Are they trying to see you? What about your friends from church? Because I have to imagine you're not showing up on Sundays to church during this time. Like, are people reaching out to you, or is everyone just written you off? I mean, what's the tether to your, previous life?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because I forgot some things.
Yeah.
So I was in youth group, I was in the band, and was kind of seen as a leader in the youth group. And so shortly after I moved out and we were at the youth pastor's house and this became public, they decided it was a really good idea to pull all of the youth group together and leaders of the youth group, all my siblings. And they have like a Q&A about the situation. And essentially it was decided amongst all of them that my girlfriend and I were now for sure going to hell. And it was really a dire situation because if we died anytime soon, then that was it. We were going straight to hell. And
they're saying this, I mean, your siblings, which are,
Yes.
they're, a couple of them are significantly younger than you.
yes,
They're kids. I mean, they're
Yeah.
all kids. You're a kid
They're
even at this time, but they're all children.
Yeah.
Sitting here, your parents
Of
aren't
all
present,
ages,
nothing.
yeah.
It's like it's all just children, and they're saying,
Mhm.
Your older sister and then someone that you look up to these other kids, they're going to hell. I mean, like this is
Mhm.
this is
Yeah, so it's
crazy.
extremely upsetting, obviously.
That must have been absolutely mortifying.
It
I mean,
was.
for you, of course, but I do in that moment think of your siblings. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and my parents actually tried to get them to stop, to not have that conversation amongst the entire youth group. It wasn't appropriate nor helpful. From what I understand, the senior pastor told the youth pastor he had to do that so that everyone understood it was wrong. But my
Like they're
dad,
using you as an opportunity to try to scare everyone straight, literally.
And I remember like both my dad and my mom had a meeting with the pastor, had a meeting with the youth pastor, like did everything they could to stop the conversation or to get them to not do that. And I don't know if maybe they just didn't know when they were going to do that. And that's why my siblings were there. I've had my own experiences and my own pain through all of this. And then I also have so much empathy for imagining what they went through. Like when my parents are out and about looking for me, or because they were looking for me. They didn't know where I was for quite some time. So they're out looking for me. They're gone all the time. And then they're spending time like cutting off my bank accounts and having all these meetings and these prayer chains. And so like they weren't home from what I hear talking to any of my siblings, like after the fact, they weren't home because they were focused on me, focused on, saving my life and all of this different stuff. So not only are the three of them like at home on their own, but they're also scared and they don't understand why I'm doing this or why this is important. All that they know is that the sister who they love more than anything is really quickly in a turn of events moved out, left, and all they're hearing from all these other people is that if I die, I'm going to hell, or that I'm causing embarrassment. But I think at that point with their ages, they were just like, they just didn't understand. My sister and I, we've spent so much time over the years, like talking it through and like understanding like what that was like on their end. And then, and there is a lot of pain. There is a lot of pain. There was a lot of confusion. There's still pain to this day. I don't know that there's confusion, but yeah, I can't imagine. I think around that time is when my brother started having trouble in school and trouble like concentrating and getting through it. And, you know, he would just get so upset, and he's young, right? He would just get so upset and he would throw his books, because we're homeschooled again. So, you know, my parents are gone or distracted on, you know, thinking and worrying about me. And I think at a pivotal time in their life, they did not have what they needed. And was that my fault? No, but I can understand and I can empathize how that for them is like a really painful time and hard to understand.
Yeah.
And still, like even my brother, when he like lashed out at me recently, that was one of the things. It's like, this has been happening for 20 years. And that's because, I mean, that was 20 years ago, would have been when I was 17, you know? It's like a long time of pain. It's a really long time.
Yeah.
But for them, just like so confusing, which is why after all of that, you know, I think I said this in the first episode, but I just got so tired and I was missing my family, and like the anger had subsided. Like this went on for about a year and a half, and the anger had subsided enough where now I'm just really missing them. I'm really, really missing them. And they're bringing me to have conversations with anyone that they could find who may have almost had an affair, who was in the church, or had feelings for someone who wasn't their husband or their spouse or whatever. Like anyone that they could find that in their mind, like I could somehow relate to, they would pick me up to go and have these conversations and be like, trying to like remove the shame for me to come back. Like, hey, you know, this sexual,
look
like,
what they moved on from.
Yeah, like this sexual deviation, or it can all be worked out, and you can change and you can be healed and you can this and you can that. So it was a good year and a half, I think, of my parents' main focus being on the situation with me. And so when I saw them, whenever I would see them, it wasn't very often, but when I would see them, both my youngest siblings, because they're twins, they're the same age, both of them, when I would leave, they would just cry. They would just bawl.
Were you seeing them like you were just happening upon them in public, or was there time during this year and a half where you would go over for dinner, or like you'd be invited over, or they would come visit you, or how did that? Right, because we kind of jumped around a little bit till you get your apartment, and it's like no contact at all. So how was the process into you ever starting to go over for dinner, having some chats? Like how did that kind of come about?
Yeah. Well, no, my parents called me when I was at the ladies' like mobile home and stuff like that, but I wasn't going over to their house by any means. So yeah, now I'm in my new apartment, and they would, you know, they were desperate. So they were like, you know, come over for dinner. We'll still let you leave, but come over for dinner. So I think like things had kind of evolved where it's like they're starting to change their strategy a little bit.
Yeah, they're like, we'll take any time with you and hopefully we'll chip away at this.
Right. And so then, so then I would come over, we'd have dinner. It was very awkward. But then I would leave, and it was like that starts to pull on your pull on your heart, especially for my siblings.
Right, because you're leaving every time. I mean, you're repeating this pain of having to walk out the door every time you go over there.
Mm-hmm. And I would call it brainwash, but like what you learn in the church and all of that, like all that they can think is like, why won't you come home?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it more important that you do this? You're choosing that over us, right? And it's so ironic how that kind of works. And, you know, there was just like a lack of understanding. And they're just like these innocent kids. It's not like, you know, they're just innocent kids.
Right.
They don't understand.
They only know what they're taught. So they're thinking like, why is she doing something bad?
Mm-hmm.
And that's hurting us, you know,
Right.
like, how could you? Yeah. They don't really have the reasoning yet.
Yeah. You know, and they miss me. Like,
yeah.
At that point, my oldest sister had already left. She moved to Texas to go to Bible school. So she wasn't home doing any of this. So I think the experience for her is even different, right? Because she wasn't even home. It was particularly my 3 younger siblings. So really impacted them. So yeah, after all of this time, now my heart is like softening up. And I know that my only option is to either go home and be able to be with my family, which is like the greatest ache in my heart, is not being with them. And if I go home, I can make that ache better. And then the only thing left for me to do is then to push down all of the other stuff, who I'd want to love. And in my mind, I'm like, maybe I can do it. Maybe I just haven't met enough guys. Like, maybe this is what God wants for me. Like, there's all sorts of things like going through your mind to rationalize that the truth is that, one, I didn't want to be with my girlfriend anymore because we were just done, where a normal breakup would be like, yeah, you just break up and your life keeps going.
And like, you're teenagers at that point, right? So
yeah, we're children.
The burden of all that to bear on a teenage relationship is like unimaginable.
It is. Yeah. It's too much. I mean, it's just like not a normal situation. No. And then not only to bear that on that type of relationship, but then also all of the other like heavy emotional things that are going into it, right? I've gone from, I am in the middle of nowhere in a mobile home with people I don't know in any capacity and with no access to anything, no money, like no food, no whatever.
No resources.
Yeah. And once I was in the other mobile home living on my own, like I lost so much weight. I couldn't even keep my jeans up because I didn't have enough money for maybe the normal amount of food that I would eat. So I was like an athletic kid. So I think I probably just lost a lot of muscle as well. I can't keep my clothes up. And, so then again, it's like, then I would see my family if I did see them and they're like, oh my God, you look so terrible. And I'm like, well, yeah,
right.
It's because I don't have any food. But even during that time, like people would bring me food and like, so there were some really dark times for sure. And then like I just always was able to like make it through. And a lot of it was from like kindness of other people. So, you know, I've made it through all of that. Now I'm living in a much healthier environment. I have my own apartment and I'm able to see my girlfriend a lot more. I'm working, but it just kind of hit me. It's like, I have literally worked so hard just to be able to get my own apartment and work at a country club. And there were older people that worked at the country club, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing. But I remember looking at them and thinking like, this is not what I want. If I don't do something different, I'm going to end up the person who is working at a country club when I am however old. And I'm going to miss the opportunity that I should have of, you know, going to college and doing this and doing that. So there was like so much wrapped up into how I'm feeling at that point. And also, of course, like just really missing my family. So I'm going through the Burger King drive-through. I'm feeling all of this already. And I think I mentioned this on the first episode, but it's in the drive-through. I look in the drive-through window and my mom and my 2 youngest siblings are there, who just really pulled on my heart the most. And immediately both of them look at me and start crying. And then I start crying like uncontrollably. Like at this point, I can just like not even manage my emotions. And I think that was the time where it was like having my family is more important than being who I want to be. It's more important. And I started having these like thoughts of like, if I don't do something different, I've already missed a birthday and a Christmas. And if I don't do something different, I'm going to miss this the rest of my life. I'm going to miss every birthday. I'm going to miss like all of the moments that where you watch people grow up and you watch them become who they are. And, I won't get to, hug my dad again, and I'll never have, XYZ. And I just wanted my family so bad. Obviously still do, but especially then it just like got to a point where it was just like, there's nothing that's enough to make me continue to miss out on their lives. And then like my two youngest siblings in particular. And so I went home, or I called my mom that day and I was like, well, maybe I could try, like, would you be open to, maybe I could try to like boys, and, maybe I could try, da, da, da. And of course they're like, yeah, yeah, maybe you could. And, obviously they're at a place where they're like seeing this light, right, that I'm going to be coming back home. So they're being very gracious. And it's like, yeah, I think you could. And, and whatever else. And so I go home that day. That's the same day I said in the first episode where I like pull up my Bible and then it has this scripture about that God is in your rear guard. And I think I thought that it meant like, okay, he doesn't want me to be gay, and he's gonna help me through this. Now looking back, I don't think that's the case. I think it was like, it's gonna be a journey.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a long journey. Yeah, but I'm here and I'm gonna protect you. And so anyway, so I went home that day and my entire family, besides my sister, because she was going to college, they were on the front porch. And I don't know how long they'd been waiting. I must have told them I was coming. And like all 5 of them were just standing there. And I pull in and, and then I, walk up to the stairs or whatever. And then there's just like tons of hugs and kisses and just like, oh my God, like, we're so glad that you're home, and we know this is complicated and we're going to, figure it out. But you made the right decision. But yeah, it was shortly after that, I was like, okay, this isn't working to just like be here in this town where all of this happened and everybody knows. And now, of course, all of my parents' friends and everyone in the church is like, oh, we're so proud of you and da 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 da. But it's just like, it really feels like you're coming into this like environment where it was like, thank God you did the right thing. And here you are, this broken person who deals with homosexuality. And thank God you can come back and, God can take these things away, or like even in like a sense where it's like, yeah, you're a little dirty. We know that. Like, we know you're dirty, but just give it some time. God can heal you and forgive you and remove all of this stuff. So I'd heard about this Bible school and in California, and I was like, they're not going to accept me. But I applied to 2 different Bible schools, one of them which was an actual college. And so this Bible school my sister went to, and I did not get accepted because of the homosexuality. because they ask you on the Bible school forums, they will ask you, have you ever participated in a homosexual relationship or homosexual tendencies or anything sexual having to do with homosexuality? Like, they ask you a lot of different stuff. And so I said yes. I was honest about it. So I didn't get accepted. And then I did get accepted into this one in California. And shortly after that, in 2007, moved across the country. And my parents, I think, were thrilled. Now, obviously, and I think that they also knew I needed to get out for different reasons, right? I think in their minds, it was like, you need to get out so you're not around these people anymore, or, you're this girlfriend or whatever. And yeah, picked up my life and moved straight into Bible school. So I'll let it rest there, but yeah, and then we'll kind of continue on the journey, but yeah, wild time.
I mean, obviously, of course, I know these stories, but oh my gosh, it really got me emotional. I'm going to cry just even thinking about it, but thinking about you and your family and your siblings. And, I make it very clear to you, and I think I've said on the podcast already, I simply do not have the capacity for the grace that you are able to show people, nor do I really want to have it, to be honest, but you can empathize with how painful, losing a family member or all of that must be. And I just can't imagine how that would have weighed on you to feel like you're willing to stifle who you are and your own happiness just to be, that sacrifice alone is insurmountable. And I can only imagine, how difficult that would have been. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, many more stories to come, but I think that was a good one.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and let us know, your thoughts or how this relates to you or anything like that. I think we'd love to kind of start a little bit more dialogue about those as well. So,
yeah. Thanks, guys.